Hello, all you skebbies. This is Graydancer with a really quick intro today. We are starting off 2018 with a recording of a class that we gave at the Pleasure Chest in LA. And it was a great fun class. Naiia and I got something on ritual and rope. And it's going to be a little bit weird of an edit. You get to listen to us talk about stretches and yoga things that we were demonstrating for the class. I also cut out most of the directions on how to coil rope, but that just gives us a great excuse to do a video. So next week we will have a video here from the Ropecast where we talk about the things that we had to cut out of the ritual and rope class. In the meantime, I think there's some fun stuff to listen to. You'll also hear me give a pretty eloquent plug for my friend Twisted Monk, and he is, of course, one of the sponsors of this podcast. And they had rope there at the Pleasure Chest, so I definitely plugged it there. And I'm also really excited. He has a new suspension ring with an integrated swivel that he's selling on his store. And that is what my pennies are going towards acquiring. You also, by the way, can use my affiliate link, which you can find on the podcast page, which is at libsyn.com/Graydancer. And that will not only get you hot and sexy rope, but it will also get me a little closer to getting that hot and sexy ring. So yeah, it's a blatant personal plug. Also want to give a big shout out to Lee Allure, who is off this weekend to Charmed. If I have any listeners who are also at Charmed, please feel free to say hi to her and thank her for sponsoring this podcast. She does erotic hypnosis, and you can get a listen to her kind of stuff at her site at leeallure.com. Now, I don't want to take up a lot of time, but I would be remiss if I did not mention a few things about events. First of all, we are only 7 weeks away from Ropecraft San Antonio, and tickets are going fast. You are in the regular ticket period of our ticket sales. This is the great price, $159.99 for a weekend of rope performances, rope classes, rope and space, catered meet and greet, special interest spaces, and everything in scenic San Antonio. And you should go to ropecraft.net and see about getting your tickets and booking hotel rooms, because it's looking like a pretty packed crowd there. Unfortunately, Flow Erotic is going to have to wait for another year. We are not able to bring you Flow Erotic this time, so if you were thinking about that, I appreciate you thinking about that. Keep thinking about that, and we'll see what the future brings to us. But in the meantime, fresh off the wonderful LA Grew, which is great, we have announced the Madison Grew, which will be February 2nd through 4th. And the following month, in March, is the Chicago Grew, 16th through the 18th. You can find out about those Grews and more at grew.space. In the meantime, since this is a really long podcast, because the class, even cut, is an hour and 14 minutes long, so feel free to break it up and sit back and relax and enjoy some ritual in rope.
Hello, welcome to the Pleasure Chest on this beautiful Sunday night. Thank you all so much for coming over. We are so honored and so excited to have Graydancer and Naiia here for Ritual and Rope. Who's all excited for tonight? Yeah! It's going to be a great class. We're really excited to have you too. Thank you so much for coming. And you also get a evaluation form that you can fill out by the end of the night, right up front of the register. Once you fill that out, you turn it in and you get 15% off your entire purchase for tonight. So yeah, I hope y'all have a great night and have fun, and thank y'all for coming. Let's show them around what.
And to speed things up, the answer on the evaluation is 5.
You're flying with them. We're flying them with alcohol.
Yes, that's right. So the funny thing about this is that we had this grand plan of starting the class that you'd all be talking and kvetching with each other, and we would suddenly sit down and kneel and seiza across from each other, and she would lay out the rope very ceremoniously, and we'd bow to each other, and you'd all think that we were doing a rope ritual, when in fact we were just kind of making shit up as we went along. And as we're sitting here, and you all got quiet, and we're waiting for someone to come introduce us, and it's like, well, there's a ritual right there that we're all sitting and waiting for to have happen. which includes clapping and everything like that, which is kind of a good indication of the fact that anything can become a ritual, and sometimes we're in rituals and we don't even know it. And also the fact that we, as a couple, we're here talking about ways to leverage ritual into making your sex, kink, whatever, hotter, more fun, more connective, not to tell you the right way to do something. Okay, you know that. You're the one who figures out that. So this is not the gospel according to us and things like that. So who are you?
Today?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Naiia. I've been in the BDSM scene for probably a decade. I've been co-presenting or bottoming for him in classes for about 6 years, maybe a little longer. And I started teaching myself about 2 to 3 years ago. I also am a moderator for a bottoming group, and yeah.
And a little definition of terms, when we talk about tops and bottoms, the top is person that does things to someone, and the bottom is person that has things done to them. It is different in our minds than dominant and submissive, which we are also, but the dominant and submissive situation, the dominant is the one who comes up with a plan, and the submissive is the one who tries to follow the dominant as the dominant tries to follow the plan. So that's a different kind of thing. For this purposes of this, we're going to use those terms very particularly. Okay, if we're talking about topping and bottoming, it's not going to have anything to do with a power exchange relationship, somebody's in charge, somebody's not. It's kind of like two dancers. Okay, one person may lead, one person may follow, but they're together. If we talk about dom and sub or something like that, that will be a different kind of a power dynamic. It can also be used with rituals. And I'm talking, and I haven't introduced myself.
I was about to say.
Yeah. My name is Gray Miller. I've been teaching as Graydancer since about 2003 in the kink and alt sex communities. I was in town for a great big event called the GRU that we did here. That was an unconference that was wonderful and exhausting, and that's why my voice sounds so wonderfully baritone tonight. Yeah, we are in a power exchange relationship. I tend to be the top in our rope things, although she has topped me on occasion. And we also have a full-time dominant submissive kind of situation, which is not because I am inherently better and deserving of such things. It's because we have talked and collaborated together to come up with a way that works for us. We've been together now for 9 years, 10 years?
Yep, almost 10.
9 or 10 years. So I say that because there are times when I will say comments to her or about her that may seem objectifying, that may seem sexually explicit or suggestive or things like that. How do you feel about that, Naiia?
If you do it, that is fine. I ask that no one else in the room does that, though, because I don't know you, and so that will make me uncomfortable.
Right. I, on the other hand, am an attention whore, and so if you make objectifying, suggestive comments about me, I'm okay with that. You have my permission, should you choose to do so. That being said, I guess I do the first part, don't I? About my ritual and habit thing.
Yes.
Okay. So, the first time we taught this class, we realized in the middle of it that basically we are the Dharma and Greg of rope here. Good. Some people actually saw that show. We also recognize by saying that we're sort of dating ourselves in a certain period of television. But basically, I tend to be a skeptic. Okay, I tend to be operating out of scientific principles and things like that. So I look at ritual as opposed to habit. And a habit is something that you do over and over again to the point where you don't even think about it. And it's great. It's a very useful tool, you know. You get up and you brush your teeth. You don't even have to wait. You know, you just your body automatically goes into it. And that's great because you can have muscle memory that makes it come in really easily. With ritual, it's the opposite in that it's something you do the same thing over and over again, but you pay way more attention to it than you would than it deserves. Okay, And that also lends it to, you can do over again, you get the muscle memory, you get to know what comes next. But you run into the danger, so the danger of habit is that you run into the danger of forgetting something because you're not paying attention, skipping over something, not noticing, oh my God, my toothbrush is in a really lousy shape, but I never pay attention to it because I'm half asleep. So, what am I going to do with that? With ritual, the danger you run into is that as you are doing things and you're paying so much attention to it, that this becomes, in your mind, this is the way it is done. Which means that when new ideas are presented to you, you sort of dig in. No, that's not the way you coil rope. That's wrong. That I know how to coil a rope, and this is the way I coil a rope. And so sometimes when you're paying too much attention, you give it more weight than it necessarily deserves. Okay, so that's kind of the way that I look at the difference between the two. And another way to term both habit and ritual is a ritual is a checklist. Okay, it really is. It's a first. I'm gonna use I was raised Mormon, and I apologize if there's any Mormons out here that I'm not meaning disrespect. I'm just going to talk about the way that we would serve the sacrament. Okay, which is that 2 of us deacons would be, or 5 of us deacons would be lined up, and 2 of the teachers would be kneeling across from them, and one of them would kneel down, the other would stand, they'd say a prayer, and then they would hand the deacons the bread or the water, and the deacons would go around and they'd pass them around to people, and they would take the water and put it in there, and then the deacons would come back and they'd put the trays back, and the teachers would you get the checklist, right? You got all those things in there, and it's really kind of scary. I haven't gone through the checklist in about 35 years, and I know it by heart still. But that's kind of the power of checklists. Anyone here heard of the Checklist Manifesto? A guy named Atul Gawande, who's a doctor. And he promoted the idea of checklists specifically in surgical and in medical situations. And then later on it was adopted by airlines and things like that, air transportation, I should say. And it significantly reduced the level of accidents and things like that. Which is why a very good teacher and friend of ours named Lokai was like, hey, we should have a rope checklist. Because rope's dangerous. Who here has done rope before? Okay, a few of you have done rope. Have you heard that rope is dangerous? Have you who haven't done rope before, have you heard that rope might be dangerous, that you could get injured? It's true, you can. I mean, heck, rope is a form of execution that has been used for millennia. So, yeah, it is dangerous. And he thought, hey, how about we use checklists for riggers, for when we're going to tie somebody up and have them flying from the rafters in order to make sure we don't forget a certain knot and make sure that we rig everything exactly right. How about we use checklists? You know what the biggest problem is with checklists? Checklists are not sexy. Okay, sorry. Yes, I apologize. I should not yuck your yum. That's true. Checklists are not. Well, I was going to say checklists are inherently sexy, and I'm thinking about the whole 50 Shades contract thing. Yeah. Hey, baby, we're checking them off tonight, right? But and leave it another way. If a dominant walks into a dungeon with his rope bag, or she's all dressed up with her heels and everything's really exactly right, and then they pull out a checklist. That's usually not what people picture when they're thinking of the yes. But to quote, getting to a quote, damn it. To quote Atul Gawande, and he using the words of heroism, that checklists are not what heroes are supposed to just the seat of their pants. John McClane in the Nakatomi Plaza, he just manages to get it. He didn't go in with a checklist, damn it. He just went in and kicked ass. But he says maybe our definition of heroism needs updating. And I think the same thing goes for the idea of checklists and that. Except let's start by changing the word. Instead of calling it a checklist, let's call it a ritual. Okay, a ritual. If I say, hey, we're going to do a rope ritual, that sounds sexy. We know this because if we called this class your rope checklist, probably wouldn't have had as many people here. I would, but Oh no, I guess I am still typing. Okay. Thank you. So, I was talking with my therapist about what it is I do and what it is we do, and I was talking about how, just like in the rest of society these days, we're having a lot of attention brought to some of the consent violations and boundary crossing that has been done within the rope community, just like within the wider community, because we are a microcosm of the regular culture. And I was describing to her what we do with things, and she was getting this expression. She's like, well, of course you're going to have a lot of consent violations. I said, what do you mean? And she explained, and I apologize, I was not able to find exactly what was the name of the person that she referenced. But within the realm of intimacy and trust and establishing trust, there are three modes that really establish and change literally the neurochemistry to make someone be more trusting and more open to suggestion. And that is skin to skin, face to face, and eye to eye. Okay, and those are the three things. And in rope bondage, you oftentimes have all three of those things, although depending on what's going on, if it's a performative kind of thing, it may not be face-to-face or eye-to-eye, but it's almost always some level of skin-to-skin. And even if it's not actual skin-to-skin, the rope itself is an expression of will. So if my rope is being placed on her body, that means that, to some extent, she's going to have that constant contact. So what that meant to her was that we were unintentionally turning our interactions into things where we were less able to coherently make decisions. And I mean we, not by saying just the bottoms. I mean the tops too, and that's probably the most dangerous part. There is the idea of subspace, of losing yourself in the rope and things like that. But this skin-to-skin, eye-to-eye, face-to-face happens with the tops as well. And if they're not aware of it too, they also can become more suggestible and more likely to not understand or not be able to make as rational decisions as they might make when they are starting out their collaborative discussion on what's going to happen. Where if somebody, says, hey, I want you to do this thing, in their head, instead of going, no, we didn't agree on that thing beforehand, instead they're going, well, they must really want that. That must make it okay. All right, let's do this. And then later on, people are, wait, no, we said we weren't going to do this. Why did this happen? So it's important, and we say this is important because this has not been taught in a lot of rope classes, that you understand that both parties, when you are interacting in the situation, you are going into a changed mental state. And it's not to say you shouldn't do it. It's not to say you shouldn't embrace those changed mental states. They're fun. Yay. But be aware of the risks going in. All right? Take it away. Naiia. What's it like being a bottom?
Don't have to do anything, just sit there.
Oh.
Yeah, no, not true, I know.
Bite my tongue.
Really? Yeah, so he's talking a little bit about subspace, and he talked about top space and how that can also be challenging. But the problem is let's say we're in a scene and I don't know him very well. I am allowing someone I don't know very well, first, a certain amount of trust to put rope on me, put me in a position where I might not be able to run away, to yell. He could tie me up and leave me there.
Could.
And that would be maybe not the worst of the things that could happen. Also, because we are doing this in such a way that there is connectivity, there's the skin-to-skin, possibly the eye-to-eye, face-to-face on some levels, especially because you end up doing like a lot of this. If you're like doing the very slow, connective, like sexy rope, it's not the big performance type thing. You are giving yourself a level of trust, and then you are breaking down barriers very quickly that you would normally have, say, us having a conversation in a coffee shop. I am not suddenly going to disrobe and, fall at your feet. I am doing that with him. If that's what we negotiated,
Right.
collaborated on. And so you have to remember that there's a certain level of personal responsibility that you're taking into this situation, because yes, you want to go into that floaty subspace and you want to feel all those endorphins and you want to do all of that. But when you're in that mental headspace, that maybe that was I'm not really sure I want to do that, when you talked before you started playing, can suddenly become a yes. And they're getting into that headspace and they're like, well, maybe I'll just ask again. And not thinking of it as any type of coercion or manipulation of the situation, because they're getting into the headspace too. But they've done it, and then...
Doing so well.
Yeah, oh look, she's getting really turned on. Maybe she's changed her mind. Well, maybe I would say yes mid-scene. And then the scene ends. And then the endorphins start to drop. And then suddenly I'm sitting here and I'm like, wow, I had said I really didn't want to do that. Why did I do that? And it can get very confusing in your head. You can start to wonder if you were manipulated into it or what. But there's a certain level of trying to stay grounded enough to remember your limits in that scene, and especially with all the connection that's starting to happen. And that's just kind of, that's as factual as I'm going to get this whole conversation. Like you said, we're sort of the Dharma and Greg, so you got the Greg. My theories. We're gonna go into
It's
theories.
still all you.
Yeah, I know. I'm just handing you
Okay,
the.
that's right. I take technology. You'll be fully in
So
your
where
face.
he likes the facts and the checklist type things and the, learning to tie very specific ways, I'm more pagan, blue, chakra, meridian type of, I'm just going to sit here and float. And that's sort of the nice thing about it is together, it makes a really nice combination. And you don't have to be factual about everything. But I believe in energy and he talks about face to face and skin to skin and
neurochemical changes. Caused because of the
Neurochemical
nerve
changes.
receptors and
I
mirror
call it
neurons.
energy. Energy. It's a feeling. Your aura changes.
Okay.
I do a little Reiki. And it's easy to kind of go with that feeling because it feels good. And I really just I suddenly
Transformation through touch.
Oh yeah, transformation through touch. I'm a former licensed massage therapist, and so there's a lot of things we do called healing touch and transformation through touch. So there's a big difference between him tying something around me and doing this and then standing back here and tying it, as opposed to standing like this and drawing things across me and keeping that connection, because for me that means that energy is constantly flowing between the two of us. Now it is with the rope even at a distance, but when there's physical bodily touch, it's going to be heightened, because that is allowing yourself an amount of trust with a person, and it can be very ritualistic. It can be, because I could be having an anxiety attack and he could come up and do this to me.
She has her hand on my neck.
I have a hand back here. He's just touching me. But because we've been together for so long, that grounds me. And the anxiety will start to reduce. You come up and lay rope on me. We have rope that we do that you'll see later that is very much a meditation for me when I have bad anxiety. It's very much a way for me to center myself. You go ahead.
Okay. So, there's lots of different terms for that energy. You have meridians, you have auras. Chi is one that is used a lot. And there is one of the best teachers and rope performers and rope riggers and theorists out there is a man named Barkus, who's based in Vancouver. And we were in a class with him, and he said, I do not believe in chi, but I find it very useful. And I subscribe to that wholeheartedly. I have my issues with the belief system of things like that, but I do find it incredibly useful. And we tend to, I tend to just translate it into the idea of the neurochemical changes that happen in the body. The other thing that, another fantastic rope educator is a woman named Lizard Happy. That's what she goes by within the community. And she's based out of Alexandria, Virginia, I think? Yes, in that area. And she teaches a great safety class. And there's a lot of discussions in the rope communities about, where should you put the rope on the arm to avoid the nerve, and how tight should it be, and things like that. And Lizard has a very simple way to determine that. How tight should you do the rope? Ask your bottom. Is the rope in a dangerous place? Ask your bottom. And I would say that when it comes to creating a ritual and determining how that energy, or whether or not the energy is working between you, what you should do is ask your bottom, okay, as the top. Or ask the top. Except, especially if your top happens to be someone who is a product of our toxic masculinity culture, if you say, hey, are you feeling this stuff? Unless you say something like, are you feeling the force? Are you in one with your feelings? They're going to be like, I don't know what you're talking about. That thing. It can be difficult to get into that situation. So it helps to find a language, okay? And it can be just a matter of, does it feel good? I do have an easy way for myself to think of the way that energy works. And I think of energy as focused attention, okay? Can I use an example here?
Yes.
Okay, so just, you can stay there. The difference is that, right now, as I'm talking, I'm engaging with lots of different people. I'm making eye contact. I think I make eye contact with just about everybody here at some point or other. I'm, waving my arms around, being somewhat expansive, as opposed to if I was giving the entire class with this kind of situation. Even if I'm talking to other people, the fact that I am sitting here just like this has changed the way that everybody in the class is feeling about things, and the way that we're feeling about each other here too. There was a change in the way that felt. Was it chi? Was it meridians? Was it something like that? I don't know. I know that I changed my focus, and it changed the energy. Okay. When I'm doing rope, that's the difference between me focusing on her versus focusing on, hey, is anybody seeing what I'm doing here? This is so awesome because I've been doing the ties for so long. The habit is there. The muscle memory is there. I can tie this particular harness in my sleep. But it's not going to do a lot for the connection, as opposed to tying a very, very simple, maybe not even tying a knot, but just laying rope and paying attention to that focus. That'll change the energy. So, whether you are on Dharma's side or Greg's side, there's ways that this can work for you. So now we're going to, any questions or comments about energy or what we're talking about when we refer to that? No? Cool. We're going to talk about rope walking.
So, people in here familiar with boot blacking?
Some?
Yeah,
Can you tell us what it is?
It's basically a liquid switch on your boots.
Yeah, but done in a way that is usually in a sort of a servicey or artistic context. It's like, it's artisanal boot polishing, really. Would be a way to put it. Yeah, and there's a lot of tradition behind it. Okay, the boot blacks that have different tricks and tips and ways of doing things, and they have antique shoe shine boxes that they'll use and stuff.
Yeah, it's especially in the leather community, it's actually something that has become to the level of competition. Boot blacks will, you can ask a boot black to fix just about anything made of leather, and they will whip out a toothbrush and some dental floss and fix it. I don't know how. And they do a lot of study and talking to each other and classes and testing of things. They will go to thrift stores and buy cheap destroyed leather boots and try to make them look new again, using a myriad of different tactics. Rope walking is, I think, the equivalent of bootblacks to leather. A rope walker is someone who takes care of theirs or someone else's rope.
I do want to say this is not a term that George Lucas came up with or something like that. It actually does go back to the 18th century, 17th, 18th centuries. The people that made rope, repaired rope, the places that they did it, they had to have long stretches of buildings or hallways where they would wind the rope together and things like that. And those areas were called rope walks. Okay, that was actually what they're called. You can still find places in like Connecticut and maybe in seaport towns where they have rope walks. Now they're usually like shopping centers and things like that, but that was the original use of it. So this term is not made up. It's actually sort of recaptured for what we're talking about here.
So, much like a bootblack would have their case with their saddle soap and their polish and their stained polish and their brushes and their shining rags.
I'm getting it ready for you.
Thank you, sir. A rope walker is someone who they have certain tools to their trade. There are not as many as of yet. Did you pull the scissors out? No. Okay, so I usually have a pair of scissors with me, just regular scissors. It's okay. And what will happen is we will get done with the scene, or he will come home from a trip where he's been playing, and we're poly, by the way.
Polyamorous.
And the rope will look like this is actually fairly neat. I will usually have to untie, I call it the clusterfuck knot, just lengths of rope that are hooked together. And because it's a natural fiber and it breaks down, you don't always want to keep it bundled like this. And so there are it's very ritualistic what I will do, because I will sit down.
Yeah. Can we emphasize something? I don't come home with it all tangled up in there because I'm an asshole who just says, fuck that, I'm not going to do that. I do it because she enjoys taking it out and doing this as a service.
And one of our sort of rituals is that I'm the only one I am the only person other than him that's allowed to handle, put the ropes back together. It's not just because he's a chick. And it doesn't seem like a lot, but I will sit and you have to kind of, the bends will stay in them, like the loops, and it'll break down the fibers. So just simply running it through your hands will stretch it out back to more of a normal shape. If he's been traveling a lot and it's gotten a lot of use and it's been in the clusterfuck knot for a long time, I won't bundle it like that so much as tie it like this. It's really complicated overhang. That just gives it a little bit more time to stretch itself out. There's different things I will use, treatments to soften the ropes, to check for weak spots while I'm doing it. If rope gets very gummy, we had a friend who was testing out his treatment on a rope, and he's like, let me know how it lasts. And it had beeswax and it got super gummy. Throw it in the oven at 200 for like an hour, take a rag, wipe it all off, and retreat it. Scissors I keep so that I can trim ends, because these will pull the older the rope gets.
That's what you mean when you say treated.
Yeah. What did Moko say this was? Because this is a new one for me.
He would call it rope balm.
Balm.
And, you know what I mean? Moko jute. And we'll pass it around.
Yeah.
It's animal product free, I know that. And you can smell it. And what you do with this is you get a little bit on your hands, and you run it over the rope. And
Now, not too much.
Conditions the rope to be softer and sort of restorative. It's like restorative cream for your skin, but for your rope.
It's probably a mixture of jojoba oil and not beeswax if it's animal free,
Yeah.
but maybe it's soy wax. And there's going to be different rope makers make different treatments.
Moco has his.
Monk.
Dijado rope is another big rope manufacturer, has his. Twisted Monk has it. I think they sell Twisted Monk products actually here. Their rope. We'll talk more about him in a little bit too.
Now, you would do that with hemp or jute, not cotton. Put oil on cotton, it's just going to get heavy and wet. So,
And with nylon, let me show you the proper treatment of nylon. If you have nylon, the proper treatment is.
Wow, that went a long way.
Yeah. No, I don't actually hate nylon. It's just I'm more of an organic rope person. But there isn't much. If you hand this to a rope walker and say, "Hey, treat this for me," that it's basically there.
I'm going to throw it in the washing machine. Throw it in the washing machine and the dryer.
Right.
And I'll be done. Because then it will not only be clean, it will be sterile.
And that's a good point in terms of, all the stuff she's talking about with the maintenance of the rope. She really digs that. Okay, she loves, hey, here's all the rope, and I'm like, okay, you're going to have the scene with the rope, and you two have fun, If you're not into that, then maybe this is the kind of rope you want to use, because that's the kind of thing you're doing. Your ritual will be something else.
Yeah. And just as an aside, I am never going to, if this gets blood or other wet things on it, natural fiber you can't really sterilize without destroying the rope. So just keep that in mind. What? And so it becomes a ritual to sit and just take care of it and to run them through my hands and to make sure that for him, I know that his kit is put back together the way that he likes it. And that's just one of the, I don't sit at his, I'm sure some people do this, but sit at his feet. I know another rope walker who she sits with her partner and they both give themselves blisters and run the ropes like this through their hands to straighten them and pull them really tight. But there's something called burn rate. And if you do this a lot and really fast, you're going to get rope burn between your fingers. So I don't really recommend that unless you're super masochistic. But yeah.
It's just not a Mary Poppins song. Now, I say thank you to Midori for that one particular trick. The way that I like my rope tangled is a amalgam of several different ways that people tie rope, or that people coil the rope. It does make a difference, and in some ways, before I'm doing a scene, taking my rope and undoing it and making sure it's all coiled and tightly in exactly the right space is a centering thing for myself, okay? Even if my hands are just naturally doing this, in my head, I'm thinking about, what's going to happen in the next situation. Think of a boxer wrapping their hands. Think of a gymnast putting on the tape or getting the chalk or things like that. There's that moment where you're doing something that is practical, but it's because you're trying to make sure that you are getting into a headspace where you are centered and where you're going to have that happen. Now, it may seem strange to have this kind of thing in a ritual and rope class, but these are the elements that can go into the rituals, okay? So it's kind of the idea is to get you thinking about the different things that is conditioning the rope part of my ritual? Is the coiling of the rope part of my ritual, or is it her ritual? There are other people we know who the ritual is the person sitting over here looking at her going, I'm going to coil up all my ropes. And you're going to sit there and you're going to watch me do this and wonder what it is that I'm going to do with these ropes. once they're coiled.
And he's thinking, I need to pick up milk.
Yeah. As long as you're doing it in a deliberate, and let's face it, that happens in any kind of ritualistic context. Like, yes, this is for the father, and then in their head they're going, I hope the Packers win tomorrow. That can happen. That's when you know you're edging between habit and ritual. Okay, and both can be useful, but it's a good idea to figure that out. Okay. I think that's where we're at, yes. Any questions about the rope walking aspect of things? What?
Is that a cotton rope?
We should actually pass the ropes around.
So he has jute.
Oh, no, there's a couple other things we didn't talk about.
Okay.
Not through these. So, yeah, we can actually pass this around. This is jute, and I'll talk about why it has some significance later on. By the way, all of this rope is safe to be passed around. It has not been used in any of our naughty bits, just to make sure people are wondering.
We wouldn't do that.
So that's jute.
This is a cotton and silk blend.
And this is a 4-strand Bavarian blonde hemp. I love
That
this
is
stuff.
really old.
Yeah.
It feels amazing.
There you go. And this is jute that is reinforced with 500-pound test line. Pass that around to people. We'll make sure everybody gets a hold of them. This is 4mm 3-strand hemp. Pass that around. What else have we got here? This is 5mm tight wound hemp as well. Yes. And this is another aspect of jute that is treated differently. So as you get, you'll feel these ropes. Now, this is, and I guess I should pass around the ickies. I mean the
nylon.
The nylon.
Nylon is a natural cellulosic, or it's partially plant.
Well, so actually, I think that I'm not sure that is nylon. That might be MFP, which is
multi-filament.
Polypropylene.
Yeah.
It's pretty. Yeah.
Nothing natural left in it.
And we are. Here's the thing.
What is that one?
It's kind of funny you say pink. It was red to begin with.
Well used.
That is. It's unfortunately the Monk doesn't, to my knowledge, sell that particular brand anymore. It was called 4-strand Bavarian blonde, and it was a specific lay of rope. It's a little bit heavier than the normal hemp rope that he sells. So, I full disclosure, Monk is a sponsor of my podcast.
And a friend.
And a very good friend of mine for many, many years. And we wholeheartedly support his rope work, especially because he employs people at a living wage before you have to, and gives them benefits and things like that. And he's a very ethical businessman, as well as making really, really great rope. So this is a sort of a blatant plug, as well as saying that is part of the ritual. One of the reasons we do like this stuff is because you don't have to treat it if you don't want to. Okay, you can pull it out and immediately start using it with your partners and things like that. And there's different kits, including a DVD. He has also free videos online that does things.
I will also say that once you get, especially if you get, say, jute, which these are hemp, but if you get like a natural jute, the best conditioner is body oil, like
Human skin.
So using it over time will soften it anyway.
So yeah, conditioning, it'll change over time, which can be part of the ritual. And that's part of why we bring out this red rope. This is one piece of about 8 pieces that we have. And this is probably the oldest rope that I own. Had it for probably 15 years?
Probably. You had it well before you met me.
Yeah. And do you want to talk about the significance of it?
So, first off, because it's so old and it's so soft and it's so well used, it is no longer viable for suspension. So a lot of times, especially if you do a lot of suspension, what will happen is you retire your ropes. Now you can do that one of two ways, which is you can just get rid of them, or you can use it only for floor work. Somewhere where if it breaks or comes unraveled or whatever, it's not going to be an issue. What we happen to do is we did an art piece in which he stuck a bunch of needles in me and tied me to a chair.
And then tied the needles to the chair.
And then tied the needles to the chair with much thinner rope, not this. That would have been really painful. And then...
Because art.
Because art. We were doing an art show for a friend, and so we did a performance piece for art.
Yeah.
And I bled for art. So, not this piece in particular, but some of the other pieces got my blood on it. So then the kit became mine. What we use for the both of us. And because it's too old to be used for suspension, it now is just a kit of rope that we use rarely. But if we really want to have an intention set for something, or the significance set for something, then we will use this rope.
Right. And that's kind of, so there is no viable particular difference other than age between this rope and this rope. Okay? Heck, they were made in the same place by the same man, actually. I mean, this is the way it works. But because this rope has a greater significance to us, it becomes a more ritualistic rope.
Is that rope this rope?
No, that's that. I believe that actually,
Last
almost
one you passed
six.
That's
Or 8
six.
millimeter. Yes,
That's 6, yeah.
Yeah, well, no, this is 6. This is 8.
Is it?
Yeah, look at that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, this is 8 millimeter rope, which is also really. I had a pack of blue 8 millimeter rope for years. I love. I'll pass it around.
I will also tell you that different rope makers will tell you that is 6.
Yeah. It's kind of like something else that people kind of misjudge the.
Yeah, they're never quite
measurements
sure
of.
what the. These are. This is not ours.
Yeah, that's true. But also, I should say that dyeing is a special thing. The colors that you get and things like that are going to be specific, which we'll also talk about when we talk about that particular rope. But it is just a matter of the materials themselves, kind of like a chalice or a jewel or a crystal or a wedding ring or a particular necklace or a collar like she's wearing right now, a tattoo. All these things this is nothing but ink put into my skin. But it represents something a lot more to us because it's representative of a labyrinth, which is where we had a commitment ceremony after a lot of struggles to get to a point where we could do that. So suddenly this has a lot more meaning to me than it probably would to you if you looked at it and said, hey, neat tattoo. Or, wow, that's a stupid looking tattoo on your thumb. Whatever you said.
So that rope down there is sort of the equivalent of that. Like for us, there's meaning there. There's a connection there.
So
This is not ours. We don't want to get it given because you have a piece like that at home.
now another way to get into ritual, we talked a lot about preparing the rope. There's also the matter of preparing the bodies because rope is a physical type of situation. It's something that requires both body and mind to do. And I hate when I slip into that kind of dichotomy because really body and mind aren't two separate things. Okay, your mind is a bunch of jelly inside your head that has neurochemical reactions, and they're not separated. Which means that you can sit there and say, I'm going to totally focus on you, but if you have not been taking care of yourself in terms of eating, if you're not practiced paying attention to things, you may not be able to do that. So there's a lot of different ways that you can learn how to focus and pay attention while your body is doing things. And one of them is something that I personally am very grumpy about, which is yoga. Okay? I hate yoga, but it's about the only thing that keeps my older dancer's body still moving. So I do yoga every day. Unfortunately, it's more of a habit than a ritual. But that being said, that is a way that you can do that together. We had a ritual for a long time where before bed we would do yoga together. Okay, and that became a way to go together and become more centered in the same mental state as well as taking care of the bodies.
Yeah, and one of the things you have to be careful of with that sort of is the whole, like, getting yourself into a mindset where something that was sort of ritualistic, like doing the yoga together, doing a 5-minute meditation before we went to bed, is a ritual starting to slip into a habit. Because if it didn't happen, then my world was all distressed. And you have to be careful with those things. Make sure that you're doing them for the right reasons.
However, they also can become, if it is a ritual, it can become a great structure to hang on to when other things aren't so good. Oh my God, I'm sick as a dog. I sprained my ankle. I sprained my wrist. I can't do any rope. But you know what I can still do? I can still do the 5-minute meditation with you. I can hang on to that bit of togetherness until I get better in other areas.
We're in a really big fight.
Yeah.
We can sit here with our eyes closed, face to face, and do a 5-minute meditation.
Yeah, God damn it, I'm so fucking angry at you, but I'm still here.
I don't recommend doing it eyes open, face to face.
Well, no, I actually do.
Well, you do.
Because of the neurochemical changes. Eye gazing, that eye-to-eye thing, I mean, that's part of why they say that children have such big eyes, is so you don't strangle them when they're crying. They look so cute, and it makes you. I have 4 daughters. I'm well versed in that.
Too.
Yeah, and they're all alive. So thank you for refreshing that. I have 4 daughters. I have not strangled any of them, and that's because they're so goddamn cute. That works.
Well, at least the grandsons are.
So another reason to focus on this kind of thing, we have a thing that we do, because obviously we teach together, we do performances together, and we produce events together. Which means, and let me tell you, if you ever want to stop playing and stop, doing that kind of stuff, start producing events and play and teaching and performing together.
Yeah.
Because suddenly, the time that you used to play, well, you need to be practicing, you need to be organizing, you need to be doing these things. And so we run into the situation where we're like, we're not having fun with it anymore. We're still very passionate about it, or somehow we're passionate about doing things with other people
We're
stuff.
passionate about getting other people to do it.
Right, exactly. And so what we developed was something we call practice, which is when we're saying, hey, we have performance coming up, we're gonna practice it, but if it happens to morph into playing together, that's okay. Now the important part, this goes back to what we were talking about before, about how you can change the situation. That's where we are intentionally saying, if we get into that state where we're like, yeah, this is really good, let's do some other stuff too. Mm-hmm. We are intentionally saying at the beginning, we're going to go with that. We're going to open up a space for that. And so we say, hey, let's do some practice tonight. And so that way, if we have a great practice and we don't play, that's okay. If we practice and we get halfway through and then we're suddenly playing again, that's also cool.
It also helps because life can get in the way of your fun sometimes. And so if you're like us, you will set a rope date on the calendar, shared Google Calendar.
Hey, future self, you're going to totally be in the mood for that later on.
You're going to really be in the mood to, nothing else is going to happen ever between now and 48 hours from now that will change your mind. And then life happens, and then you've got this date looming over you. Neither one of you wants to break it. and you're both exhausted.
I can tie you up, sure.
And then it doesn't happen. And then someone's disappointed. Or both people are disappointed. And so the practice was kind of a way for us to get around that. Because then it was like, okay, we're going to sit here and he's going to try to remember how to do the caterpillar tie. And, you know, if something else happens,
And I have
great.
I have my iPad here with the picture showing here, and I'm going to, okay, have it. You know, and then suddenly I notice, oh, wow, you're really hot. You know, here's the best thing. The thing is to remember that she and I are the people doing this here, not me and the rope, not the rope and her. The rope doesn't care. Exactly. It's the old IKEA commercial with the lamp. The rope has no feelings. Okay. If I am only halfway through the caterpillar tie, and we decide we want to do something a little bit more fun, that's cool. The caterpillar tie will not care whether that happens. Okay, so by all means, please try and remember that the purpose behind this. Now, there are people who are like, well, no, you know what? I don't really care about you, Gray. I just want to feel rope on my body. You know, and then it is that is the situation. But that's not a situation where there's practice. That's not a place where you can move into those other situations.
And then there's people like me that don't tie structural ties on people. I tie something called Ichinello, which is a one rope kind of connective thing. And there's no practice really for me on that one.
Yeah.
There is a little bit, but because I've
Everything
tied
is a
knots,
practice.
everything is a practice.
Yeah.
Everything is new.
Yeah. It's like, anybody here do improv, either improv dance, improv comedy, something like that, you know.
Contact.
Improv comedy takes a lot of practice, right? Even though it's improvisational. So it's that kind of situation.
Yeah.
All right. So in terms of preparing the body for that kind of thing, and this can be a way, let's say I work at home, so it's hard for me to do this, but let's pretend like I have a desk job and I'm like, hey, tonight we're supposed to have a rope date. I can take certain ways to get my mind set way beforehand. And that's the key. If I don't think about that rope date all day long, and then we reach it, you know, suddenly it's after dinner, and in my head I'm like, all right, Game of Thrones, let's get to, it's our rope date. Suddenly I have to do this 180-degree shift. Oh yes, I am now in sensual mode. I'm ready. Not going to happen as easily as if I'm sitting at my lunchtime, you know, and she texts me and says, hey, I'm still looking forward, really looking forward to tonight. I'm like, oh yeah, tonight. I'm looking forward to that too. So I'm going to show you right now my favorite wrist exercises, because that's fingers and wrists are what's going to be sore the next morning after a lot of time. Okay. So first thing, you feel free to follow along if you want. These are my little wrist exercise things. I'll hold a hand up, grab the hand, and I'll pull the fingers out like that. Okay. You just hold it there. And if you want to do the yoga breathing, if you want to, breathe through your wrists, kind of thing. I've been trying to learn how to breathe through my ears for a long time, but it doesn't work very well.
Stop trying to beat the person on the TV.
The other person, do the other side. Okay. And then I take my hand, holding a palm facing me, and I'm going to wrap my forefingers around my thumb and plant my thumb of my opposite hand between the knuckles of my fourth finger and my pinky here. Okay? And I'm going to cup it, and I'm going to turn it towards myself while drawing the hand that's being held down. And what this does is it kind of flexes the wrist and stretches it out. Now, anybody here do martial arts? Does this look familiar? Okay, this is totally stolen from Aikido. But it works really well. Okay. And the last thing I will do is I will interlace the fingers, and I will put them out as if I'm cracking my knuckles, except then I'll take them and then bring my hands up and then let them loose. And what I'm doing here is I'm giving my shoulders a full range of motion kind of situation here. Okay? Because the other thing you'll get is your shoulders will do this. And And those things, so I can do that at my desk. If I'm sitting at my desk and people are like, what the fuck are you doing? I'm like, oh, carpal tunnel. I don't want to get carpal tunnel. You know, I'm going rock climbing later on. I'm just trying to, you know, trying to get that stuff already here. Yeah. And in my head, I'm going, oh, I'm going to get Naiia. And that kind of thing changes your mindset and gets you bit by bit a little bit closer to where that's going to happen. Okay, so Naiia, what's your favorite types of bottoming?
Okay, mine are not so easy to do in the office. I actually love yoga. I do it a lot out of love. See, his problem is he tries to win. Can't win at yoga. And because I'm not going to just be using my hands and wrists, not that you just use your hands and wrists, but that is going to be more of the focus. I will tend to do, is anyone familiar with yin yoga? Yes. Okay. So yin yoga, and we start out by saying I'm 47 years old. The reason I do yin now is because I have arthritis in both knees. And I cannot do the dynamic positions from hatha and vinyasa and all of those things anymore. So I will do what is called square, which you put your leg like this, and your other one stacked on top. And then eagle arms, up, lift up, because you want to pull on the shoulder girdle. And then you're going to drop your body forward. Now, you do not have to go all the way to the ground. If this is as far as you go, then this is as much stretch as you need to do. Some people can go all the way down. And then I will switch and do the other side.
That's double pitching, and that's really hard to do. Like, my knee is like up here when I try to do that forward.
And it's going to be. Some people, not everybody, I've been doing yoga for a long time. This one actually doesn't hurt my knees. I don't know why.
And I sit there and I watch this and I'm like, kind of like you're saying, I know how to do that, but when I do that, I don't look like that. that is not the word. But I also found, yin yoga, and I don't want to give them the impression that the wrists are the only thing that a beginner should work on. It's full body. It's about attention, and I do yin yoga also. I just tend to swear about it a lot more than she does. And various type of things like that. So
the other one I will do, because when you were doing bottoming a lot, you need your hip flexors to be stretched out. So then I will do, in yin it's called swan, which is this. And you're just going to stay here for 3 to 8 minutes. This is why I like yin, because the whole goal is just to stretch. And it's not like, and you're only going to go into it as much as you can. I am getting a class together it's called Stretching for the Flexibly Challenged. And if you're in this and you can't get any farther down, then like yoga blocks and stuff like that to keep your hips square will keep you up like this, and then you can come down, keeping a block here to put your head on. Pillows and bolsters are your friends.
and partner yoga is your friend. You know, there is that kind of situation. Now, we're talking a lot about yoga because that's what we have more experience with. You could also do a contact improvisation. You could say tango. You could say karate. You could say whatever help, jujitsu. But anything that is moving yourselves together in a place where you are engaged, these will translate over into your rope work. Tai Chi. Push hands kind of situation. So the thing is when sometimes when you are practicing rope, you're not doing anything with rope. And by putting that mindset in there, if you are sitting there in yoga class and I'm thinking, okay, I'm doing this, but I'm doing this because it's going to make the rope scene with Naiia later on much hotter. That helps. Okay? And it also helps the rope scene later on. Like, yes, I've been doing this. Okay. So any questions about those type of things? We're going to get back into the rope stuff here in a little bit. Any questions? And yeah, by all means, feel free to partake of more beverages. We get more entertaining before wine now. All right. So This pile of rope that we brought is not accidental. It is actually very intentional because all of this rope has various levels of personal meaning. If we lost this rope, this bag of rope, it would break our hearts. We have a whole drawer full of other rope at home that if we lost, like, yeah, who cares? You know, that's just some stuff that we got. This stuff has special meaning to it. So, for example, this one here and the 3 others, which are ones I'm going to be using when I do the ritual with her in just a few minutes, actually. This one is from a man named Moko, and he makes jute rope, and he makes it all by hand. I have been there with him as he has done that, and part of the reason I was there with him is because in his rope walk, which is a great big warehouse, on one end you have all the different strands of jute coming down, and at a certain level there says Lokai, and then next to it says Wicked Dave, and next to that it says, I think it says Kinoko, and all these things are naming are world-class rope riggers. I mean, Wicked Dave is the one who tied up Lady Gaga, and the picture is hanging in the Louvre, okay? This is like big-time stuff. And the reason I was there with him was because he said, hey, Gray, this is where I have to make each of their things for the way they like their rope. How do you like your rope? I want to give you a name on that place on that floor. Okay, it's like, yeah, I know you guys have the whole stars and the sidewalk hall of fame here. I don't care. I have my name on Moko's floor. Okay. So he made Graydancer spec. I said, well, I like my rope to be a little thicker than the other stuff I've seen you make. I like my rope to be fairly tight because I can't afford to buy rope a lot of times, which means that it's not going to fly through the air as easily as loose lay rope is. I like a tight lay, as they say. And I like my rope to be a little bit longer than some of the other stuff. So he made these ropes, as he calls it, Graydancer spec. Okay, you can go to his website and get Graydancer spec. Now, I will say, Graydancer spec, it turns out, is not as popular as Wicked Dave spec. That's okay. That's fine with me. It still means a lot to me that he took the time to make this stuff with his own hands and condition it with his own hands. That has some meaning to me. Okay, and none of you knew about that before I held this up. But knowing how this rope feels to me, knowing the story behind this rope, will change the way it feels when I tie her up with it later on. Okay, so part of the idea of ritual is attaching a story or a belief or an experience to an otherwise inanimate object, okay, that you're going to use. So there's that one. The next one we're going to talk about, what was the next one we were going to talk about?
Was it Phoenix? Or was
No,
it?
Russ's.
Russ's?
Yes. So there's a guy, I think I first knew about him as a photographer, Twisted View out of Pittsburgh. And there was a period of time we were all very concerned with the possibility of ropes breaking, and especially in suspension. And Twisted View, who liked to make rope just as a hobby, he created this rope which has the 500-pound suspension line, or fishing line on it, test line. And they put that through stress testing to the point where, he is standing in a loop and he'll cut the organic stuff, so he's just standing on the test line. Which, let me tell you, it would not be very comfortable if it was on the body, but by using that as an upline, suddenly it's much more secure. You're not worried about the rope breaking at all. And the fact that he put that care into it and stuff like that becomes representative of the way that he cares of doing other things like that.
What's an upline?
An upline, thank you for calling me on that. I hate that I use that target. When you're doing a suspension, you'll first tie a harness on somebody, and then you have uplines which take them up to the hard point in the ceiling, and that's the thing that actually holds up the weight of the body in the harness. Okay? So the upline is different than this stuff because it's going to be has more strain on it, in a certain way, and the friction can sometimes break them. Okay. Moving on. This is back to Twisted Monk. Many moons ago, I think it was 2004, 2005, Twisted Monk, who, of course, he's a monk. He works in the Abbey outside of Seattle. He had a big fire, and it would have ruined his business. Except he said, "Look, I can't promise you rope for a while, but if you'll place the orders now, it'll give me time to rebuild, and we'll get it to you." And the community around the world said absolutely, and placed pre-orders. Sometimes just donated money towards him rebuilding the Abbey. He did it, and this was the Phoenix rope, rising from the ashes, red and gold dye, which was very hard to get exactly right. And it was a very limited run. In fact, when it came out, it went so fast that the only thing I could get was a 10-foot length of 6mm. And then I had another friend of mine who unfortunately died, and they had a ritual pyre where you put a gift on the pyre to remember him by, and the only thing that seemed appropriate was my monk Phoenix rope. So it burned. And I thought, okay, I'm not going to have that anymore. Recently, within the last year, some very dear friends of ours gave me this Phoenix rope that they had bought way back when. So now suddenly I have Phoenix rope again. Now think about all the different layers there. We have the Twisted Monk Abbey burning down, the community coming together, helping him rebuild, coming out with this, then that being used as a tribute to another friend who passed away. Incidentally, that event that I did today, which started 10 years ago, he was the first person to actually host that event and the first person to propose that. So it was like there's all these different layers to that. And then it was, again, given to me by other friends who knew what this kind of stuff meant to me. So you can imagine this particular piece of rope, oh my. But yet, it's just a piece of rope. Oh, wait, it gets darker.
Yeah.
Talk about the green stuff. Naiia, it's you doing about that.
This one?
Yeah.
This was do both?
No, just that one.
Just this one?
That was a surprise.
Was this the one he left in the... Oh, wow.
We had, yeah. Too much yoga.
Too much yoga.
So we had a friend named, he called himself Action Bastard. And he ran a company called Bastard Ropes. He's a veteran. And he, at some point, Naiia was sort of talking to me, what color green do you like? That whole thing where they're getting you something, but you can't tell exactly what it is. And she was asking me those questions.
So Bastard would text me every once. I was sort of his moral compass on some things. He did 4 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, and had some pretty severe PTSD. And every once in a while, he would get this brilliant idea, and he would text me and be like, "I want to do this. What do you think?" And I'd either be like, "Hell no," or "Yeah, maybe." So he was texting me. He's like, "What color does gray like that?" And so I'm sitting there, I'm like, I think it's green. He's like, what color of green? And I'm like, bright green. You had a very specific one. It was the elf green, the green from the elves' cloaks in the
Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. Over the
And so he hand-dyed a bunch of rope in that color as a surprise gift.
And we talk about rope kits, kind of like this. This is the Monk Robust kit. It has enough for a certain level of ties. A full kit generally has 12 lengths of about 20 to 30 foot rope, 27 to 30 foot rope. So he gave me a full kit, hand-dyed, specifically to the color that I like, that he come together with. Now, one of the reasons, and we're going to try really hard to keep it together here, is that we're talking about Bastard is because Bastard took his own life 2 years ago now.
Yeah.
And that hit everybody really hard. In fact, when I found out, I was at an event and there was a friend of ours, a gender fluid queer person, who had special rainbow colored rope that Bastard had dyed for them specifically. And they had done specific pictorials with it, and I actually now have framed over my desk one of the images from that rope pictorial with the rainbow rope put over it and things like that, which is why she now has this. And
so after his passing, his DS partner and his girlfriend contacted me, and one of the events we run, they were all going to be at, and it was going to be his birthday that weekend, and they wanted to do the very final public sale of the rope at our event, which of course we let them do. Now, Mike was extremely proud of the colors that he came up with and the color schemes. He did a 3-piece kit for me of purple, and he didn't like the purple the first 2 times he dyed it, so he tried a third, and that's the one I got. But they had just odds and ends pieces, and so this was the last of this particular rope. And the Anna and Becca gave it to me, and I don't tie with it. I don't do anything with it. I don't want it to break down. It sits in a very specific place on my desk, and it is basically a memorial piece of rope. Now, the reason I mentioned the purple kit is because a year, almost to the day after he took his life, what was his saying? Tie like a bastard.
yeah.
We did a scene that involved that rope. A lot of cigar ash and scissors. And we destroyed that rope.
And very ritualistically.
Yeah.
And intentionally.
So there's a lot of ritual and a lot of meaning and a lot of things that can go into rope. It doesn't just have to be rope.
So we bring this up because I'm not saying we should have more religion in our life, and maybe some of you have very strong religious ties, but a lot of times it's hard to reconcile our kinky selves and our kinky desires with the religious rites of passage or the things like that are out there, or even just the public rites of passage. Okay, it can be difficult to do that. Rope can be a means between which you can remember your friends, celebrate your anniversaries, celebrate your accomplishments, celebrate surviving fucking 2017. Okay, whatever it may be, that can be a way to do it. It can be a catharsis. It can be a celebration. It can just be a romp that's just fun and wild to do. We brought up all these different stories and these different types of rope and things like that, not to say you have to embrace all of them. This is the result of working with rope since 2003. It's what, 15 years now?
Yeah.
15 years of working with rope
We
and
met
rope
through
bondage.
rope.
And she and I met because I was teaching somebody how to suspend upside down. And the other person that was with her is one of the closest friends I have in the world. So these kinds of things can be life-changing if you do the paying attention kind of thing.
So as I said, we will bring back some of the things that were more visual in a video release. So watch your podcatchers, whatever you're using to listen to this podcast, for that. And we'll also, of course, have a download via ropecast.graydancer.com. And in the meantime, again, thank you, Twisted Monk. Thank you, Leah Lure, for your sponsorship of this podcast. LeahLure.com is where you can find samples of her erotic hypnosis techniques. And, of course, TwistedMonk.com is where you can see rope bondage classes and buy rope bondage rope, and other fun equipment. I hopefully will see some of you at the Madison Grew coming up, or perhaps at Chicago. But between those two, of course, there's Ropecraft. So that's what we're looking forward to. In the meantime, I'm Graydancer, signing off. That's some good rope.